in English. 2021. What do they look like? Zero-point reactors. A zero-point reactor may look different depending on the species, culture, size, and model of the craft. But here I will concentrate on two kinds that are mostly used in so-called modern times by the Taygetan culture that mostly only vary in size. One, the larger ones used on big and heavy starships, and the smaller variant used for small agile craft such as fighter types. From inside a ship, be it large or small, once you are in the reactor control room, in the engineering levels of the craft, all you can see is a flat metal color smooth wall with large rectangular panels with no handles. On some ships, all you can see are two walls at 90 degrees angle of the same smooth metal steel color with removable panels. Those panels can all be removed until the point where the entire wall is gone. In a Suzy Class 2 fighter class ship, the control room from where you can see this wall is a white square small room with no right angles at its corners, no larger than 8 square meters. The walls are flat, but all the corners are rounded out, and they are all clean white with a white ceiling and light coming from a large ring on the roof that almost touches the walls in its circumference. The main entrance is on the wall opposite to the reactor wall and is a large rectangular sliding door, rounded edges, and the top half of these doors are transparent. The floor is dark gray, and in the center there are two white rectangular panels with the control surface slanted at a slight angle. When in off position, the control surface is black glass. When on, it manifests or produces the controls, buttons, and levers as 3D holograms over that surface as needed. The control display screens are only of the holographic kind, appearing in front of the user, presenting all the data as needed. This 3D hologram screen can be modified in size, and the objects there can be manipulated by hand or by thought, using brain-to-AI interface at will. The reactor itself, as seen when removing the access panels described above, or as seen before it is installed on a ship, as for example as when it is standing alone in a warehouse, is a large metal sphere. Size varies according to the ship it's meant for, and what is visible is a web of carefully ordered oval-shaped tubing covering its entire surface and orderly coming out from each panel or subsection of the surface of the sphere and moving downwards towards the floor, each one ending with connectors and adapters to install it on the ship's reactor room. Among this tubing, there is another less visible web of room temperature superconductor cables of small caliber. Both the sphere itself and its oval tubing are steel color. The cables are black with bronze color connectors. The tubing is placed around the sphere in such an ordered manner that it would remind you of solid-state circuitry. When I say oval-shaped tubing, it means that if you cut one of these, the cross-section would be a flat oval in shape and not round. Very close image, but in steel color, not green. Although in this section I will only be describing how a zero-point reactor looks like and not how it works, as that has been described in detail before, I will mention a few things here. The web of oval tubing enveloping the entire reactor sphere is not for one purpose only. It is conduit tubing, that is, multiple functions, and sub-tubing, wires and pathways are contained inside them for many purposes. Some provide protection for superconducting cables that feed the artificial gravity manipulation electromagnetic frequency generators that control the reactor's core. Others are the cables that conduct the electricity generated by the reactor's core to the electric current collectors, for lack of a better word. Others take electricity from the thermoelectric cells on the inner surface of the sphere, also to the collectors, equivalent to perhaps capacitors. Among the thermoelectric cells inside the inner reactor sphere wall, there is also a web or array of tubing set as a spherical heat radiator that covers the entire inner surface. This radiator is filled with coolant fluid and is to cool the reactor, to keep it at the desired inner temperature. This hot fluid is then cooled off using hydrothermic electric units that transform heat into more electricity. Over the special radiator-like cooling system tubing the gravity generators, electromagnetic frequency modulators are installed, and in between them there are thermoelectric panels as well. The core of the reactor, as described before, is a complex 12-stage toroid sphere made of hundreds of thousands of minute sand grain-size Merkaba-shaped synthetic quartz objects floating in a computer-controlled gravitational field that conducts them to move in a 12 toroidal trajectory. This is one toroid inside another, each forming the other, for 12 levels. But to the eye, it basically looks like a glowing, semi-transparent sphere, moving on itself, floating in the center of the reactor sphere. The best image I have to explain this is the following one, and we have had it for years as a note. This is GIF, but in the text it is static. This is the closest image we can get to describe how the inside of a zero-point reactor looks like, complete with the coolant radiator, cooling units, and the square-shaped thermoelectric collectors, and the gravity generators in the background, and the reactor toroidal core sphere in the foreground. This is GIF too. The power output from any zero-point reactor based on crystal Merkaba toroids, therefore giving way to the name crystal core zero-point reactor, is controlled by the electromagnetic gravity generators that are in turn controlled by the ship's AI. And it is achieved by varying the distance between and the density of the artificial quartz Merkabahs, as well as the speed of rotation of the entire toroid, or also varying the speed and relative speed of rotation between each one of the 12 levels that make up the toroid. Basically, the main principle is that when the toroidal sphere is larger, it has less density, therefore less spark gap action between the quartz Merkabahs, therefore reducing the potential output. And when the toroidal sphere is smaller and moving faster in inner and outer rotation, it has more density, therefore generating more spark gap action, for lack of better words, and with it more electricity and more heat and luminosity. The Merkabah-shaped synthetic quartz crystals are made with precise mathematical precision and precise size and proportions. They are made of chemically pure crystal. That's why they must be artificially created, and also have precisely engineered piezoelectric properties. The mathematical base the quartz Merkabahs follow is based on precise 12-base math equations, as described in previous work. Looks like a small zero-point reactor. Image: small fusion reactor. As said above, the size of a zero-point reactor depends on what it will be used for. In a large cruiser, like Toleka class, they are near to 10 meters in diameter, and the ship of that mass has 4 of them to feed its large engines and systems. In a smaller craft, like a Suzy class too, they are much smaller, being that the reactor sphere itself is only about 3 to 3.5 meters in diameter, not counting tubing and additional machinery. But I know much larger crystal core zero-point reactors have been built. And on the other side of the spectrum, there are zero-point reactors that work with the same principle that can fit inside the palm of your hand. They are used to power small drones, long-range electronic equipment for space travel, and to power weapons such as advanced ACR plasma rifles and smaller ACPs, both capable of a high rate of fire or recuperation time, and with no need to reload, as they never run out of ammunition, among many other uses. Parentheses as a side note: in places like Temer or Era, inside a planetary wireless power grid, such small reactors are not needed to power everyday devices, as they all take their energy from wireless electricity transmission technology, similar to Tesla's on Earth, before being hidden from the public by Thomas Edison, as it would be impossible to place a meter and therefore to bill their customers. About the shape and color of inner Merkabah quartz crystals that make up the core of the reactor, they are about the size of a grain of fine sand or of salt. Only difference being that there, in the image, are 3-sided Merkabah objects, and the ones in zero-point reactors are 4-sided Merkabah objects, as in the shape of 2 pyramids placed one inside the other, one upside down, opposed to the first. Plasma turbine engines. There are several variants of plasma drive turbine engines. I do use the name turbine because it does spin inside, so it is a turbine. Contrary to a jet engine, it has no compressor stages, burners or afterburners. It does not require any kind of fuel or propellant. It works by spinning its components in opposite directions while being fed trillions of electron volts. And this creates a very large electromagnetic plasma field. The size of the engine varies depending on the ship, but all work with the same principle. It is a cylinder or large pipe, hollow inside, with a cone at its rear. The walls of the cylinder is the turbine itself, and it is made of several layer cylinders, one inside the other. The amount of these cylinders depends on the model of the ship, but most large ones and some fighter class have 12 layers, each one rotating in the opposite direction. Although on the exterior an electromagnetic plasma engine can look very much alike a jet engine, inside it is very different, but the overall exterior look is very similar. In principle, each layer rotates in the opposite direction to the former one, clockwise, the other counterclockwise. Each one is fed a different high voltage electric polarity, and they all rotate over the same center or geometric axle. This creates a strong electromagnetic field, as said before. This field holds a frequency, and this frequency is controlled by the ship's AI computer. Controlling this frequency is achieved by varying the speed of rotation, voltage, and the relationship between the rotation patterns between the layers of the counter-rotating turbine. In older ships, the turbines were made of a set of cylinders, one inside the other, like Matryoshka Russian dolls. And the power to each level, or to each individual rotating drum, is achieved using a power distributor device at the front end of the turbine, opposite from the exhaust nozzle. In more recent ships, this is achieved by changing the molecular structure of each layer in waves, one clockwise, the other counterclockwise. Each cylinder level that makes up the turbine will have its molecular structure change, causing a ripple that goes around each cylinder. It is critical to understand that the material used in this kind of state-of-the-art turbines is polymorphic crystalline metal superalloy. This means that its very molecular structure changes according to what the computer dictates to them. So, if you have an apparently solid turbine drum, and you change the molecular crystalline structure that makes it up in a progressive manner, as in a wave, you create the illusion of spinning within its molecular matrix. Polymorphic metal. As seen here, the little spheres are the molecular structure of the metal, and it is the structure the molecules themselves change under AI control to create the illusion of spinning. A crystalline molecular structure in a substance or material is when the molecules are set with a precise geometrical shape and order. This is the basic principle behind transparent materials. As their structure is so in order, it lets light pass through with little resistance, therefore becoming translucid. Same effect applies to superconductor materials where electricity can flow through the molecules of the material without encountering any resistance. When electricity passes through a non-superconductor material, such as copper wire, for example, it flows in a chaotic manner. Each electron in the electric current banging and fighting its way through the metal's chaotic structure. Perfect crystalline metallic molecular matrix, similar to the one found in superconductors. So, going back to the state-of-the-art electromagnetic plasma turbines used for starships. Each drum layer will have its crystalline structure change due to its polymorphic metal properties as controlled by the ship's AI using gravity and frequency management to target specific areas in the turbine structure to change. Polymorphic metals molecules react to frequency and to gravity, forcing them to change their relationship to one another. More on that. This change can be seen in a molecular level as a ripple moving its way around the drum. On each level of the drums that are one inside another, the wave will be moving in one or another direction, causing a spinning effect, even if there are no moving parts. This is the most important difference between old Starship technology and state-of-the-art as used on a SUSI 2 class. No moving parts, and all done with polymorphic metal properties. Plasma turbines in older ships did rotate as a complete turbine, and in counter-rotation according to the levels. The fact that there are no moving parts, but still the molecular effect is that of a turbine, causes this type of engine to be far more reliable than the spinning type, and also permits its frequency output to be far more precise. As the turbine spins molecularly, the AI changes the composition or shape of the crystalline structure of the turbine, altered in density and in shape. With this, the high-voltage electric current flowing through it in a superconductive manner encounters more or less resistance. And this causes its electromagnetic frequency to change as well, therefore changing its frequency relationship with other layers of the entire turbine engine. And the sum of all the interactions between the layers in the engine's interior turbines will result in the total or raw frequency output of the entire engine. By changing the interior frequency relationships between its components, the plasma flow out of the engine nozzle will have a specific frequency. This specific frequency is of a very high energy nature due to the amount of raw electric power that is fed into the engine in the order of several trillion electric volts, or TeV, not giving away specific power readings. As explained in other works, a starship, when navigating faster than light, does not really move, so it is not propulsion. A ship will alter its specific frequency to match the one of the destination, therefore jumping there. This means that space maps must be made using frequency only. This is reading the specific frequency of each place in a grid in space and memorizing it in the AI computer. So, in principle, when a ship must travel from place A to point B, all it needs to do is to change its entire frequency, the frequency of vibration, as in density and dimensions of the entire ship, so it will no longer be compatible with location place A and will be to the desired destination, place or location B. This illustrates why the management of precise frequency outputs of the engines is so important. Also because the engine must emulate or accommodate precise micro-frequency adjustments to compensate for other unknown factors that may disrupt the entire frequency output, causing a probable deviation from its destination, or simply to micro-adjust where and when a ship will arrive to its destination or point B in the example above. Because as a location is a specific frequency within a map, so is time, and the precise moment a ship should arrive to set destination B. All this controlled with the engine's frequency output system management. As places and locations are frequencies within a map or grid, all represented by numerical factors, so is time. The moment in time, past, present or future of a location, is also managed with the use of controlled frequencies that are already known to be representative of the desired location and point in time, point in space-time. Altering the entire ship's frequency of existence or vibration to match the one of its desired destination is achieved using a full immersion toroid effect caused by the high-energy electromagnetic field that its engine or engines produce. Being that the core of the engine is the core, or so-called engine as well, of the entire toroid, where one polarity is at the rear as an electromagnetic plasma output, and the other polarity is found at the nose of the starship, being that the toroid is connected to the turbine and toroidal engines using the hull and structure of the craft itself, being helped mainly by massive superconductive cables that run from the special nose of the craft that acts as a receptor to the back of the engines, where the electromagnetic energy is added to the new one the engines are producing. The plasma exhaust of a rotary magnetic engine, or so-called plasma jet, looks deep electric blue to white. However, depending on the output frequency of the engine, which is variable, there can be a change in the color tone. This happens mostly when the spacecraft is inside the atmosphere of a planet. In space, the color change due to the different frequencies exists, but it is very subtle, almost impossible to see. Secondary propulsion, plasma jet, 7.5 TeV times 4 plus 4 classified. It looks exactly the same. It is the same engine described above, same one as in the main propulsion, full immersion magnetic toroid, which is not propulsion, only as a name, as it is only a different running mode of the same main counter-rotating turbine engines. The only difference is that in secondary propulsion, the counter-rotating turbines don't close its energy flow or flux, creating a toroid as in a full immersion magnetic toroid mode. The electromagnetic plasma emitted by the high-energy dynamics inside the engines only rushes out of the exhaust nozzle, creating a plasma jet effect, therefore producing thrust as a rocket engine would, but without the need of any kind of propellant or fuel. Gravity manipulation engine pod. These are several polymorphic metal superalloy spheres placed one inside another like an onion, each one rotating in the opposite direction to the one next to it, and so on. Several layers depending on the size of the gravity engine. As with the main engine turbines, there are no moving parts. The energy flux, or flow, is controlled by varying the resistance of the electric flow of the materials by changing the crystalline structure, and therefore its superconductor properties, like its resistance to electric flow, creating the same spinning effect as if it had moving parts, but being much stronger and reliable. Its general exterior looks are that of a smooth metal ball with some tubing and electrical superconductor cable and connections on its top and bottom, few on the sides, depending on the model. Its diameter depends on the power output needed for each unit, and this depends on the size and use of the ship they will be installed in. A large ship usually has dozens of such units placed along its hull, and they serve as controlled propulsion units for maneuvers, rarely used for propulsion only, as they are vastly inefficient as compared to a full-size electromagnetic plasma counter-rotating engine as the ones described above. There is a new variant used on smaller ships such as fighter-class starships like Suzy 2, not found on Suzy 1. Those are oval-shaped, high-efficient magnetic anti-gravity generators that work with the same basic principle with the added efficiency of being able to generate the same amount of power output in a unit 50% to 60% smaller.
Why is a plasma jet better than a gravity canceller? Do they both use free energy in some way, or how does it go?
Gravity cancellers or gravity manipulators have limited power and are subject to interference from other gravity sources such as suns, planets, or worse, black holes, wormholes. And they only partially remove the mass of the spacecraft relative to the plane or density in which it is located. They are susceptible to microwave interference. That's how they shot down Roswell ships and the others.
Sure, It's not the same traveling above a planet with those ships as it is in space. And where do you get the plasma energy from?
The plasma jet ones are very powerful. They wrap the ship entirely in a high-energy energetic toroid that jumps them out of density. Nothing interferes with their operation. They are invulnerable to countermeasures in microwaves or manipulated gravity. The zero-point reactor passes electricity to very large capacitors that increase it in volts and amperage to several trillion TeV or trillion electron volts, which are passed by superconducting systems to turbines that rotate in opposite directions, counter-rotating, where the electrical energy at super voltages is constantly charged in polarity inside the core of the turbine. That is to say, with each spin, several trillion times per second, one turbine will be positive pole and the other negative. This concentrates all the electrical energy in a single point, the turbine core, and is compressed to temperatures in excess of 3000 Celsius. Electricity is turned on as controlled rays, discharging between the poles of the counter-rotating turbines. The point is reached where the energy is so great that it becomes pure electric plasma and has only one way out, backwards. This creates a rocket or jet effect with a titanic thrust in metric tons. And this plasma can be changed in frequency at will, controlled by computer. And with a frequency change, you wrap the whole ship, putting the polarity ahead in the hull, so that the high-energy energetic toroid wraps the whole ship. And with the frequency change, you change density or direction in space-time using stellar frequency maps.
Thank you, yes. It is the image made by Swaruu. I understand.
Yes, I know you know it, but it is what I'm describing here. Leaving gravitational cancellation and manipulation in a modern ship only as maneuvering engines, like control surfaces, ailerons, or rudder in a normal spacecraft.
Thank you. Can't the anti-gravity ones do the density jump?
Yes, they can make jumps, but Taygeta ship technology has improved a lot in the last 2,000 years or so.
So both types of engines can make those density jumps. Both types of engines can open and close portals, right?
Yes, so can the disks, but they need to have that shape because they're small, low-energy engines, and they're vulnerable to weapons that counteract them.
Do you mean that Earth's combat ships already have anti-gravity technology?
Some do, not entirely, but for example, the Sukhoi 57 already have gravity counselors, and the Sukhoi of the Su-27, Su-30, Su-35 family already incorporated in their systems, but not as advanced as the Su-57.